The search for my real self. I have made this video several times under different titles. I believe I deleted most of them because the titles or just the subject I kind of felt like was, I didn't quite have a point. So, or I had a point, but it was kind of not really the point that I felt like I really wanted to make, maybe. Because I talked a little bit about denial, that sort of thing. Like, mm, I'm not sure where to start with this one. I guess I'll just start with kind of where I was coming from when I came to the idea that I was trans and why I still question, even now, whether I am trans or not. So it was like 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 8, that I came to the idea that I was trans, and I've been taking hormones now 10 months, and I've been doing things like wearing wigs and clothes like this in the largely in an attempt to find my real self. Now that is something that I don't know if there's going to be like a tag on something that somewhere inside me that says, "Hey, this is your real self," or what. It's like maybe I've already seen my real self and I overlooked it. It's like I'm in an attic digging through memorabilia, and maybe somewhere, during that time I passed right over my real self and just didn't even notice it, whatever. I don't know. I don't, when I say that I'm looking for my point is that I don't necessarily know what I'm looking for. Uh, so I kind of have this idea that it will be like finding home. So the way that the whole trans thing started, uh, like when I was growing up, I would not say, well, my problem is I don't see my real self. I would not have said that. But if you were to ask me how I felt just in general in life, say like when I was 12 years old, 18 years old, 26 years old, there was a common kind of experience which I describe as being a fish out of water. That I lived my life basically feeling like an alien, like I was kind of not in the right place, and but also like a fish out of water. Like there was somewhere where I was supposed to be, which was my natural environment, my home, and I just wasn't there. I was just like, if you've ever seen a fish out of water, like when someone's fishing and they pull a fish out of the water and the fish it like lays down on the ground and just oh, and it's like it looks like it's just panicking and that kind of thing. That's how my life was. My life was basically just kind of I lived in a constant state of mild panic. I was not flopping around like that all the time, but I was in this just kind of like, when is my life going to be good kind of thing, or when am I going to feel like I'm living my life? Because that was another part of it was, if you imagine a fish being out of water and for a long period of time, the fish might say to you, "Hey, I feel like I'm not living my life. I kind of feel like, there's something I'm supposed to be doing. This isn't it." And that's how I felt. Like life was in some way passing me by. My life had been put on pause. I've also described it that way. And so this was kind of where I was coming from when I came to the idea that I was trans. It was like I had a problem and I was looking for a solution to my problem. Constantly kind of trying to figure out like why do I constantly feel this way? One of the things that was a problem for me was the relationships that I had. I was kind of constantly just struggling with relationships with people. Felt like I just wasn't any good at making friends and that's making lasting relationships. In some cases, I didn't even try to make lasting relationships. I would talk to people, say like at work or whatever, wherever I worked. I was generally friendly. I wouldn't necessarily describe myself as like outgoing or extroverted, but I was generally friendly. A lot of places where I've worked, I was consciously making an effort to try to have relationships with people, but usually once like if I quit the job or if I got fired or whatever reason for I moved on, then those relationships, as far as I was concerned, were over. And so, like right now, I don't have any healthy relationships. The closest thing that I have to a healthy relationship currently, I would say, is with a transgender person who lives in France who we talk on a regular basis over the internet. And I would say that's the closest. Uh, there are other people in my life who have been kind of around for a while, who uh, you know, it's a I would call those to some degree a healthy relationship. They're not necessarily the sort that I would uh, bank on. I guess I don't know how else to put it. I'm not. I don't want to get stuck on that. But so the thing with the fish out of water thing, a lot of that throughout my life I felt like was centered on my identity. And by identity, basically what I mean is I was consciously, this was even before I'd ever heard of like transgender identity or uh, that sort of thing. I think the closest thing that I had come to hearing about kind of the whole subject of identity was the midlife identity crisis, sometimes just called the midlife crisis, but midlife crisis or identity crisis, where people get into these situations where they just feel like, I don't know who I am, you know, and that was kind of how I was, but I was like that from a very early age. I sometimes joke that my midlife crisis started when I was 14 years old, and because I was in this just kind of like I feel like I just don't know who I am. I feel like I don't know how to act, and that sort of thing. Part of that was that kind of thing, just not knowing how to act. Especially when I was with people, I said that I struggled with relationships. A lot of times when I said that I didn't know how to act, that's what I'm talking about. Like I wanted a relationship with people, but I didn't know how to act in order to get the relationship that I wanted. I felt like with women, for example, if I met a woman and I'm thinking I want a lasting relationship with this woman. I don't mean that I want to be her boyfriend forever or her husband or anything like that. I just want someone in my life, that with a in enduring, endurable relationship, and I don't know how to act to get that. So that's one of the things that when I said that I didn't know how to act, that's kind of part of it. Was I didn't know how to act in to get the results that I wanted, to get the relationships that I wanted. Because, like I said, I was pretty bad at relationships. I just felt like things just did not go well. But part of that was just the feeling that I was being fake. It was I would look at other people and it seemed to me that they were just being themselves, But it seemed like when I was with people, I just couldn't do that for whatever reason. There was this. Uh, it's like the whole notion of just being myself was actually the opposite direction that I should be going. Because it's apparently at some point in my life, maybe as a child, maybe before I even remember, like when I go back into the history of my life, back before I even have memories, maybe at some point then I had somehow become convinced that being myself is counterproductive. It's not safe. It's not acceptable, and that sort of thing. Because I was also plagued by this feeling that if I reveal myself to people, that they will reject me. So it's like I am trying to establish relationships with people, but doing it without actually exposing myself. So now, just having said that, people, if you were just to just look at that sentence out of context, there, you might say, well, it's no wonder your relationships failed. Because you're not being genuine. You're essentially saying to the person, I want a relationship with you, but I'm not willing to expose the real me because you're not going to accept the real me. So. That was kind of where I was coming from when I got to the idea that I was trans. So, and then when I came to that idea kind of stuck with me because of that. Because I shouldn't want to say because of that. I mean that, like, the whole thing of like the fear of rejection and that sort of thing. So. Now, it may be worth mentioning that have been tentatively diagnosed with I'm checking my time here. Borderline personality disorder, which has the one of the characteristic symptoms or signs of borderline personality disorder is I'm hesitant to use the word debilitating, but it has a fear of abandonment. And I'm hesitant to use that because my assumption is that most people, to some degree, have a fear of abandonment. The question, I would say, is how debilitating is that fear? If you get along in society fairly well, your fear of abandonment may never manifest in any way. And until maybe you go up on stage and make a fool of yourself and get booed, and then you're all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, what is this? You feel that kind of fear of that fear of being rejected by society. And but so yeah, and even like when I read about borderline personality disorder and compare that to, say, what I've read about in Buddhism or Sufism, I kind of feel like borderline personality disorder basically describes the human condition. It's just an exaggerated form of it. Because if you study, say, like Buddhism or Sufism, you will learn about things like the real self. Now, the idea in Buddhism and Sufism, they are related subjects, the related ideologies, whatever you want to call it. They're not necessarily one doesn't necessarily come from the other, or vice versa. But they have very similar ideas. So one of those ideas is the idea of the real self, and that from that in this perspective, the enlightened person, or awakened person, or what else? What other things do they call it? Awakened, enlightened, is a person who has seen their real self. That the unenlightened person is someone who is disconnected from their real self, which is basically what borderline personality disorder is. So that's where I'm a little bit like, uh, is there a difference here? Is there actually a difference between borderline personality disorder and being unenlightened? Apparently there is, because for borderline personality disorder, the that disconnect is enough, so strong, for lack of a better word, that it becomes a problem for the person in their life where they just can't. They struggle to function in society. I guess I'm not sure. That's just my take on it, because I don't see why else it would be called a disorder. If what the Buddhists are referring to the average person as is the same thing that the borderline personality disorder is describing, then I'm not sure where the distinction would be in that case. And for me, this is just my own kind of thing here, is that the only reason to have that label of disorder is to describe as a situation where the person is, they struggle to function. It's good because the average unenlightened person can probably still function in society just fine. But maybe they're just not content. Maybe they're just like, I feel like something's just not quite right. Here I am on top of the world, but I feel like something's missing. So, but that is kind of the point of Buddhism and Sufism, is to reestablish that connection between the real self and what they sometimes call the fake self. I've read some books that were not Buddhist or Sufi that refer to they call it the essential self and the social self. So the social self is what you might think of as the conscious mind, which is the kind of the self that is presented to the world. This is the identity that was formed during childhood, that says this is a map of who I am that allows me to function in society, and kind of thing, right? But that's not necessarily the real person, the real self, the real emotional desires get buried, that sort of thing, suppressed, denied, and that's where a lot of disorders come from. So that is kind of the perspective through which I'm kind of looking at my situation, is from this perspective of I'm interacting with the world. I often feel like I don't know how to act. I feel like I don't know how to be myself. It must be the case then that I don't see my real self, and so that is what I'm in search of. So that seems like a long roundabout way to get to that point, but that's kind of where I was coming from when I came to the idea that I'm trans. And that is one of the reasons why I'm still stuck in this idea that I'm trans and not sure whether I'm trans or not. Because if I were to say that my real self is the fish in water, then I'm not a fish in water yet. It's like so there are times when I think, well, maybe this isn't the direction for me to go. And I don't mean that I should stop taking hormones or stop wearing women's clothing, but maybe this was just one step. You know, maybe there are other things. Maybe like I need to try being a girlfriend. You know, I need to go find a man and be his girlfriend for a little while, and see if that gets me closer to being a fish in water. Uh, that sort of thing. So you know, I don't. I don't. I don't have a clear path in front of me at this point. So right now, the only thing that is clear for me is to just keep taking the hormones, because I would say that I've had positive results so far from the hormones, but there are times when I do feel indifferent to the results that I see. I feel like there are times when I see myself with breasts, and I feel like seeing myself that way kind of increases my self esteem. It's like I see a person. It's almost like this. There have been times when I've seen myself as this more powerful person than I used to be, if that makes sense, which might seem counterintuitive. You might think that, seeing myself as trans would make me feel kind of inferior, like I'm a freak and I'll never make it in society. But there are actually times when I think, no, I am going to be more successful in society as a trans person than I would have been living as a man. uh, just things like when it comes to identity in the past, it was it was this internal image that I was looking for. It was almost like I was on this constant lookout for an internal image that I could present to the world, that if someone were to attack it, it wouldn't be destroyed by the other person, because that was what happened in my life, was I was kind of going through this Rolodex of images, almost like a Google search, where it's like I put into Google the real me, and maybe I found an image, and so I'm presenting this image to the world, but then somebody looks at me funny or laughs at me, and I'm like, no, that wasn't it. Uh, but of course, in that case, it's because the image that I was presenting was an attempt to get someone else to validate me, or someone else to like me, or to want a relationship with me. So anytime someone invalidated me, intentionally or unintentionally, even if they were to just look at me strange, like, you know, that was enough for me to just undo this image that I had just created or come upon. And but to some degree, I am still looking for an image that, if I present it to the world, maybe it doesn't even need to be an image, but that I can, if someone looks at me funny, I can say, that's your problem, not mine. If you want to invalidate this image that I have found inside myself, if you want to invalidate that, then you have a problem, right? It's not my problem, because this is as solid as rock. You can attack it all you want. You can come up here and punch me in the face and all this stuff, but this identity, it's like Superman, right? It's just like, you can't touch this. So, uh, that's kind of where how I see my search for, because if you think of like a fish in water, you can't really attack the fish in water as like saying, you're doing that wrong. The fish is like, no, this is what I was born to do. Uh, when I'm out of water, yeah, I'm flopping around like an idiot, But when I'm in water, then I am the king, you know. I am doing what I do best. Uh, I'm doing what I was put here to do. So, on that note, how much time do I have? 25. I did talk to one of my friends about the whole notion of Superman being an allegory for the real self. That Clark Kent is the social self, and Superman is that story is an allegory for the social self and the real self. That's why Clark Kent keeps his identity secret, because the if he were to expose his real self, it would make his life difficult. He does expose it, but he only exposes it to Lois Lane, and uh, and of course his parents know, but or his Earth parents, but yeah. So that is I got 26 minutes and 46 seconds to talk. I'm at 25 minutes. So me. So this was when I'm going through this gender search. I'm the real me that I'm looking for. I'm not sure how I will know when I find it, other than to hopefully I get that kind of like now I feel like a fish in water. And there are times when I do see myself like that way. There are times when I see myself just like now I can live my life. Now I can do what I was put here to do. But it doesn't always feel that way. There are times when I see myself as a man and I think